This is World Comics Review, and this is One-Eyed Jack. This is a big one. So yeah, One-Eyed Jack was a story in Valiant, which is a long-running British adventure comic from the 60s to the 70s. That was long-running for British comics at the time. Anyway, most of them only got to 22 issues, and that's 22 weekly issues. So yeah, this is kind of a prototype Judge Dredd, but set in modern-day New York. Valiant, we've got an ancient John Wagner was the writer, and John Cooper was the artist. And yeah, at the time Valiant was kind of beginning to falter and run out of steam, and a lot of it was reprints. They obviously put in, well, it's about 3 new stories. Oh, hey everyone, it's your boy Zach. Right, so yeah, they put in 3 new stories to try and boost Valiant's circulation, and this was one of them, and it did just that. So it doesn't actually say when right, 1975 to 1976, and the Valiant 1978 annual. So the weekly British comics come out every week, obviously, but then around September time there'd be an annual, which is kind of a 100-ish page hardback book, which is intended to be a Christmas present. And often the annuals outlived the comics. There was a boys' adventure comic called Hurricane, which I think finished in 1969, but the annuals ran until 1979. So yeah, and I'll explain more about the annuals and things like that when I eventually do an in-depth video about the history of British comics, which will require considerably more editing than these phone on a bracket videos I'm doing just to fill up this channel right now. So anyway, let's get into it. So this is originally printed in a British weekly. It's black and white, and the original one was half tabloid, which is kind of like A4 but a bit bigger, but the paper was kind of like this big, but they were printed in huge quantities really cheaply and really quickly, so the artwork was much smaller and had huge borders around the edge. So yeah, this is the rough size of the art, but they've put it in this kind of oversized book to give you a vague idea of what it would have originally looked like, I guess, with these giant borders around the outside, although originally kind of more serrated cutting. I actually have an original Valiant. I'll do that in another video one day. So yeah, this is we begin with the origin of One-Eyed Jack. So he used to be like a really good by-the-book cop, and he got shot, and the shot kind of grazes his eye, and yeah, the other cop takes down the bad guy, and they have to get an ambulance for Jack, and after 6 panels he's already back out and on the vengeance trail. So yeah, these 3 pages per story, basically. Sometimes there was 2 and 3 parters, especially at the end, but most of the time they had the whole script, like an entire case from the original crime to the arrest, wrapped up in just 3 pages. So absolutely no wasted panels at all, absolutely no filler or decompression. It was boom boom boom, each story point at a time, which makes this extremely thick book quite a intense read, all told. You can certainly take your time with this book, and yeah, we occasionally have this this Jack motif. So yeah, there's several stories where Jack is falsely accused of murder, or makes the criminals think he's being accused of murder, so that he can join the criminals and then find out who did another crime and bust them, and things like that. And yeah, early Judge Dredd did quite a few stories like that too, and also some faking death stories I think are in here, which is another trope of early Judge Dredd. Like, oh no, Judge Dredd is dead, and the bad guys think, oh well, we're safe to try and escape now and do more crimes, and then Dredd turns up to arrest them. So yeah, we various stories. So yeah, this one of them, this old man gets roughed up by some punks, back before punk meant the music. And yeah, One-Eyed Jack decides to go and beat the punks up with no he's got no evidence to prove that they did it, but he takes them to the alley anyway, gives them weapons and says, go and try and beat me up, and then he beats them up and takes them to the hospital, and the old man's no longer scared of him and says, okay, I'll testify. And this yeah, kind of the plane hijackers want a huge ransom, and the mayor of New York pays the ransom. And he said, we need to get the money back for the people of New York. And Jack throws the money out of the plane and it falls into the New York, and he's like, I'm giving it back to the people of New York, just like he wanted. Yeah, more stories. Now this is the one where he goes to prison and makes the criminals think he's on their side. A inevitable Chinatown story. One of the Tongs or the Triads is planting bombs to blow people up if they don't pay protection money. But he foils the Triad, and the Chinese restaurant owner gives him free food for the rest of his life. More stories. Oh, a sniper. I think this is the second story about a sniper, actually. Yeah, sniper shooting policeman. Jack's got PTSD from being shot in the eye before. An arsonist setting fire to places. Blah blah blah. Anyway, yeah, let's skip through the book. Get to, so yeah, a lot of the early Judge Dredd, and a lot of these, even these pretty hard-boiled British adventure comic stories, kind of had happy endings. Oh, this is one where he goes undercover as a cab driver because there's a serial killer murdering cab drivers. So yeah, like I was saying, a lot of these even the quite hard-boiled British adventure comic stories ended up with happy endings, or like twists, like, oh, he wasn't really a bad guy after all, except for the ones in action, which is an entire another story. I'll get into when I do action when I do a history video. But yeah, well, maybe action stories would have had happy endings if they'd had a chance to end. Spoilers alert. But yeah, One-Eyed Jack has an incredibly dark ending. So this is a spoiler warning if anyone wants to buy this book. This is your chance to butt out now. But basically, One-Eyed Jack ends up shooting his own nephew, and yeah, so he shoots his own nephew, who just tried to rob a shop and get away, and he's being blamed by his sister, I guess. Was it his nephew? I can't remember the actual relations now. Okay, so yeah, whatever. He shoots someone related to him, and the mother of that child that he shot says, yeah, you always pull your gun and shoot first. So Jack resigns from the police and turns to crime. And you think, oh, it's another one of those twist endings. Like he's gonna, oh, I didn't really turn to crime, but no, actually he did turn to crime, and he was turning to crime to eventually take out the mob boss who made his nephew, turn to crime. So yeah, he finally finds the mob boss and takes him down. But it's not like, oh, I was just pretending to be a bad guy, I'm going to rejoin the police. He did actually quit the police and is actually a criminal. So yeah, he says, it aims him, I'm gonna live as a man instead of a cop. But yeah, he probably went to prison after that. He did kind of murder somebody. And this is the Valiant annual storyline, which is in colour. Annuals had more colour and more full colour than the weekly comics, but they weren't entirely in colour. But looks like this particular Valiant annual did get a full colour story, and this is not set after the last comic story, even though it was published 10 years later. Oh no, sorry, bad at maths. 2 years later. It's set kind of during the continuity of the main story, so it's another one that stands alone. It's just in colour and a bit longer. But yeah, he's still a cop and he's fighting bad guys who are smuggling from New Orleans to New York. So he goes to New Orleans to fight the bad guys. And we also have a cover gallery. So yeah, obviously Valiant is a weekly anthology, so they were alternating stories, the story on the cover, so he wasn't in every cover. So yeah, this is about the first of the sniper stories, which is fairly early. This is just generic one-eyed Jack cover, the face that spells terror for the underworld. So yeah, I guess if they didn't have another cover ready to use, they had like generic covers about one of the stories they could put on. One-eyed Jack versus the muggers, the jigsaw killer. I think that was the other sniper. Can't remember now. I read this a long time ago. And yeah, another generic cover, just about any story. This is the other sniper story. Looks like the mob were putting a hit on him, and One-eyed Jack hits the headlines. I guess this is one of the last stories when he was went rogue, and a little bit about the writer and artist. So yeah, that's One-eyed Jack, republished by the Treasury of British Comics, which yeah, 2000 AD online. Just look for Treasury of British Comics, and you might still be able to get this. So yeah, the Treasury are reprinting all sorts of old British comic stories that have languished in vaults or expensive collections for years, and yeah, they're putting them out in decent quality, reasonably affordable, although I prefer newsprint books. So yeah, go and look them up, and if you want to see the evolution of Judge Dredd, this is a good one to start with.